once that the spindle was bloody, she dipped it into the well to wash it, but it slipped out of her hand and fell in. Then she began to cry and ran to her stepmother and told her of her misfortune. And her stepmother scolded her without mercy, and said in her rage, "As you have let the spindle fall in, you must go and fetch it out again." Then the girl went back to the well, not knowing what to do, and in the despair of her heart, she jumped down into the well the same way the spindle had gone. After that, she knew nothing, and when she came to herself, she was in a beautiful meadow, and the sun was shining on the flowers that grew around her. And she walked on through the meadow until she came to a baker's oven that was full of bread. And the bread called out to her, "Oh, take me out, or I shall burn. I am baked enough already." Then she drew near, and with the baker's peel she took out all the loaves, one after the other. And then she went farther on till she came to a tree weighed down with apples, and it called out to her, "Oh, shake me, we apples are all of us ripe." Then she shook the tree until the apples fell like rain, and she shook until there were no more to fall. And when she had gathered them together in a heap, she went on further. At last she came to a little house, and an old woman was peeping out of it. But she had such great teeth that the girl was terrified about to run away. Only the old woman called back to her, "What are you afraid of, my dear child? Come and live with me, and if you do the housework well and orderly, things shall go well with you. You must take great pains to make my bed well, and shake it up thoroughly, so that the feathers fly about, and then in the world it snows, for I am Mother Hulda." As the old woman spoke so kindly, the girl took courage, consented, and went to do her work. She did everything to the old woman's satisfaction, and shook the bed with such a will that the feathers flew about like snowflakes. And so she led a good life. She had never a cross word, but boiled and roast meat every day. When she had lived a long time with Mother Hulda, she began to feel sad, not knowing what ailed her. At last she began to think she must be homesick, and although she was 1,000 times better off than at home where she was, yet she had a great longing to go home. At last she said to her mistress, "I am homesick, and although I am very well off here, I cannot stay any longer. I must go back to my own home." Mother Hulda answered, "It pleases me well that you should wish to go home, and as you have served me faithfully, I will undertake to send you there." She took her by the hand and led her to a large door standing open, and as she was passing through it, there fell upon her a heavy shower of gold, and the gold hung all about her, so that she was covered with it. "All this is yours, because you have been so industrious," said Mother Hulda. And besides that, she returned her to her spindle, the very same that she had dropped in the well. And then the door was shut again, and the girl found herself back again in the world, not far from her mother's house. And as she passed through the yard, the cock stood on top of the well and cried, "Cock-a-doodle-doo, our golden girl has come home too." And then she went in to her mother, and as she had returned covered with gold, she was well received. So the girl history and what had happened to her. And when the mother heard how she came to have such great riches, she began to wish that her ugly and idle daughter might have the same good fortune. So she sent her to sit by the well and spin, and in order to make her spindle bloody, she put her hand into the thorn hedge. Then she threw the spindle into the well and jumped in herself. She found herself, like her sister, in the beautiful meadow, followed the same path, and when she came to the baker's oven, the bread cried out, "Oh, take me out, or I shall burn. I am quite done already." But the lazy bones answered, "I have no desire to blacken my hands," and went on further. Soon she came to the apple tree, who called out, "Oh, shake me, we apples are all of us ripe." But she answered, that is all very fine. Suppose one of you should fall on my head," and went on farther. She came to Mother Hulda's house. She did not feel afraid, as she knew beforehand of her great teeth, and entered into her service at once. The first day she put her hand well to the work, and was industrious, and did everything Mother Hulda bade her, because of the gold she expected. But the second day she began to idle, and the third day still more, so that she would not get up in the morning. Neither did she make Mother Hulda's bed as it ought to have been made, and she did not shake it for the feathers to fly out, so that Mother Hulda soon grew tired of her, and gave her a warning, at which the lazy thing was so well pleased, and thought that now the shower of gold was coming. So Mother Hulda led her to the door, and as she stood in the doorway, instead of a shower of gold, a great kettle full of pitch was emptied over her. "That is the reward of your service," said Mother Hulda, and shut the door. So the lazy girl came home, all covered with pitch, and the cock on the top of the well, seeing her, cried, "Cock-a-doodle-doo, our dirty girl has come home too." And the pitch remained sticking to her fast, and never, as long as she lived, could it be got off. Sharing joy and sorrow. There once was a tailor who was a quarrelsome fellow, and his wife, who was good, industrious, and pious, never could please him. Whatever she did, he was not satisfied, but grumbled and scolded, and knocked her about and beat her. As the authorities had last heard of it, they had summoned him and put in prison in order to make him better. He was kept for a while on bread and water, and then set free again. He was forced, however, to promise not to beat his wife any more, but to live with her in peace and share joy and sorrow with her, as married people ought to. All went on well for a time, but then he fell into his old ways, and was surly and quarrelsome, and because he dared not beat her, he would seize her by the hair and tear it out. The woman escaped from him and sprang out into the yard, but he ran after her with his yard measure and scissors, and chased her about, and threw the yard measure and scissors at her, and whatever else came in his way. When he hit her, he laughed, and when he missed her, he stormed and swore. This went on so long that the neighbors came to the wife's assistance. The tailor was again summoned before the magistrates, and reminded of his promise. "Dear gentlemen," he said. "I have kept my word. I have not beaten her, but have shared joy and sorrow with her." "How can that be," said the judge, "when she continually brings such heavy complaints against you? I have not beaten her, but just because she looked so strange, I wanted to comb her hair with my hand. She, however, got away from me and left me quite spitefully. Then I hurried after her, and in order to bring her back to her duty, I threw at her as a well-meant admonition whatever came readily to hand. I have shared joy and sorrow with her also, for whenever I hit her, I was full of joy, and she of sorrow, and if I missed her, then she was joyful, and I was sorry." The judges were not satisfied with this answer, but gave him the reward he deserved. Rapunzel. There once lived a man and his wife who had long wished for a child, but in vain. Now there was at the back of their house a little window which overlooked a beautiful garden full of the finest vegetables and flowers, but there was a high wall all around it, and no one ventured into it, for it belonged to a witch of great might, and of whom all the world was afraid. One day, when the wife was standing at the window and looking into the garden, she saw a bed filled with the finest rampion, and it looked so fresh and green that she began to wish for some, and at length she longed for it greatly. This went on for days, and as she knew she could not get the rampion, she pined away, and she grew pale and miserable. Then the man was uneasy, and asked, "What is the matter, dear wife?" "Oh," she answered, "I shall die unless I can have some of that rampion that grows in the garden at the back of our house." The man, who loved her very much, thought to himself, "Rather than lose my wife, I will get some rampion, cost what it will." So in the twilight he climbed over the wall into the witch's garden, plucked hastily a handful of rampion, and brought it to his wife. She made a salad of it at once, and ate of it to her heart's content, but she liked it so much, and it tasted so good, that the next day she longed for it thrice as much as she had done before. If she was to have any rest, the man must climb over the wall once more. So he went in the twilight again, and as he was climbing back, he saw all at once the witch standing before him, and was terribly frightened, as she cried with angry eyes, "How dare you climb over into my garden like a thief and steal my rampion? It shall be the worse for you." "Oh," he answered, "be merciful rather than just. I have only done it through necessity, for my wife saw your rampion out of the window and became possessed with so great a longing that she would have died if she not had some to eat." Then the witch said, "If it is all as you say, you may have as much rampion as you like, on one condition: the child that will come into the world must be given to me. It shall go well with the child, and I will care for it like a mother." In his distress of mind, the man promised everything, and when the time came, when the child was born, the witch appeared, and giving the child the name of Rapunzel, which is the same as rampion, she took it away with her. Rapunzel was the most beautiful child in the world. When she was 12 years old, the witch shut her up in a tower in the midst of a wood. It had neither steps nor door, only a small window above. When the witch wished to be let in, she would stand below and would cry, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair." Rapunzel had beautiful long hair that shone like gold. When she heard the voice of the witch, she would undo the fastening of the upper window, unbind the plaits of her hair, and let it down 20 ells below, and the witch would climb up it by it. After they had lived thus a few years, it happened that as the king's son was riding through the wood, he came to the tower, and as he drew near, he heard a voice singing so sweetly that he stood still and listened. It was Rapunzel in her loneliness, trying to pass away the time with the sweet songs. The king's son wished to go in to her, and sought to find a door to the window, but there was none. So he rode home, but the song had entered into his heart, and every day he went into the wood and listened to it. Once, as he was standing there under a tree, he saw the witch come up and listened while she called out, "Oh, Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair." Then he saw how Rapunzel let down her long tresses, and how the witch climbed up by them and went in to her. And he said to himself, "Since that is the ladder, I will climb it and seek my fortune." And the next day, as soon as it began to grow dusk, he went to the tower and cried, "Oh, Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair." And she let down her hair, and the king's son climbed up by it. Rapunzel was greatly terrified when she saw that a man had come in to her, for she had never seen one before. But the king's son began speaking so kindly to her, and told her how her singing had entered into his heart, so that he could have no peace until he had seen her himself. Then Rapunzel forgot her terror, and when he asked her to take him for her husband, and she saw that he was young and beautiful, she thought to herself, "I certainly like him much better than old Mother Gothel." And she put her hand into his hand, saying, "I would willingly go with you, but I do not know how I shall get out. When you come, bring each time a silken rope, and I will make a ladder, and when it is quite ready, I will get down by it out of the tower, and you shall take me away on your horse." Agreed that he should come to her every evening, as the old woman came in the daytime. So the witch knew nothing of all this until once Rapunzel said to her unwittingly, "Mother Gothel, how is it that you climb up here so slowly, and the king's son is with me in a moment?" "Oh, wicked child," cried the witch, "what is this I hear? I thought I had hidden you from all the world, and you have betrayed me." In her anger, she seized Rapunzel by her beautiful hair, struck her several times with her left hand, then grasping a pair of shears in her right, snip, snap, the beautiful locks lay on the ground, and she was so hard-hearted that she took Rapunzel and put her in a waste and desert place, where she lived in great woe and misery. The same day on which she took Rapunzel away, she went back to the tower in the evening and made fast the several locks of hair to the window hasp. And the king's son came and cried, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair." Then she let the hair down, and the king's son climbed up, but instead of his dearest Rapunzel, he found the witch looking at him with wicked glittering eyes. "Aha," she eyes as well. Rapunzel is lost to you. You will see her no more. The king's son was beside himself with grief, and in his agony he sprang from the tower. He escaped with life, but the thorns on which he fell put out his eyes. He then wandered blind through the wood, eating nothing but roots and berries, and doing nothing but lament and weep for the loss of his dearest wife. So he wandered several years in misery, until at last he came to the desert place where Rapunzel lived with her twin children that she had born, a boy and a girl. At first he heard a voice that he thought he knew, and when he reached the place from which it seemed to come, Rapunzel knew him, and fell on his neck and wept. And when her tears touched his eyes, they became clear again, and he could see them with them as well as ever. He then took her to his kingdom, where he was received with great joy, and there they lived long and happily. One eye, two eyes, and three eyes. There once was a woman who had 3 daughters, the eldest of whom was called One Eye, because she had only one eye in the middle of her forehead, and the second, Two Eyes, because she had 2 eyes like other folks, and the youngest, Three Eyes, because she had 3 eyes, and her third eye was also in the center of her forehead. However, as Two Eyes saw just as other humans beings did, her sisters and mother could not endure her. They said to her, "Thou with thy 2 eyes art no better than the common people. Thou dost not belong to us." They pushed her about and threw old clothes to her, and gave her nothing to eat but what they left, and did everything that they could do to make her unhappy. It came to pass that Two Eyes had to go out into the fields and tend the goat, but she was still quite hungry, because her sisters had given her so little to eat. So she sat down at the ridge and began to weep, and so bitterly that 2 streams ran down from her eyes. And once, when she looked up in her grief, a woman was standing beside her, who said, "Why art thou weeping, little Two Eyes?" Two Eyes answered, "I have not reason to weep, when I have 2 eyes like other people, and my sisters and mother hate me for it, and push me from one corner to another, throw old clothes at me, and give me nothing to eat but the scraps they leave. Today they have given me so little that I am still quite hungry." Then the wise woman said, "Wipe away thy tears, Two Eyes, and I will tell thee something to stop thee ever suffering from hunger again. Just say to thy goat, 'Bleat, my little goat, bleat, cover the table with something to eat,' and then a clean, well-spread little table will stand before thee, with the most delicious food upon it, of which thou mayest eat as much as thou art inclined for. And when thou hast had enough, and hast no more need of the little table, just say, 'Bleat, bleat, my little goat, I pray,' and take the table quite away, and then it will vanish again from thy sight." Hereupon the wise woman departed. But Two Eyes thought, "I must instantly make a trial and see what she said is true, for I am far too hungry." And she said, "Bleat, my little goat, bleat, cover the table with something to eat." And scarcely had she spoken the words than a little table covered with a white cloth was standing there, and on it was a plate with a knife and fork and a silver spoon, and the most delicious food there all so warm and smoking as if it had just come out of the kitchen. Then Two Eyes said the shortest prayer she knew. Lord God, be with us always. Amen. And helped herself to some food and enjoyed it. And when she was satisfied, she said, as the wise woman had taught her, Bleat, bleat, my little goat, I pray, and take the table quite away. And immediately the little table and everything on it was gone again. That is a delightful way of keeping house, thought Two Eyes, and was quite glad and happy. In the evening, when she came home with her goat, she found a small earthenware dish with some food, which her sisters had set ready for her, but she did not touch it. The next day she again went out with her goat and left the bits of broken bread which she had been handed to her lying untouched. The first and second time that she did this, her sisters did not remark it at all. But as it happened every time, they did observe it and said, There is something wrong about Two Eyes. She always leaves her food untasted, and she used to eat up everything that was given her. She must have discovered other ways of getting food. In order that they might learn the truth, they resolved to send One Eye with Two Eyes when she went to drive her goat to the pasture to observe what Two Eyes did when she was there, and whether anyone brought her anything to eat and drink. So when Two Eyes set out to the next time, One Eye went to her and said, I will go with you to the pasture and see that the goat is well taken care of and driven where there is food. But Two Eyes knew that what was in One Eye's mind, and drove the goat into high grass and said, Come, One Eye, we will sit down and I will sing something to you. One Eye sat down and was tired with the unaccustomed walk and the heat of the sun, and Two Eyes sang constantly, One Eye, wakest thou? One Eye, sleepest thou? Until One Eye shut her one eye and fell asleep as soon as Two Eyes saw. And as soon as Two Eyes saw that One Eye was fast asleep, she could discover nothing. She said, Bleat, my little goat, bleat, cover the table with something to eat, and seated herself at her table and ate and drank until she was satisfied. And then again she cried, and then she again cried, Bleat, bleat, my little goat, I pray, and take the table quite away. And in an instant all was gone. Two Eyes now awakened One Eye and said, One Eye, you want to take care of the goat and go to sleep while you were doing it, and in the meantime the goat might run all over the world. Come, let us go home again. So they went home, and again Two Eyes let her little dish stand untouched. And One Eye could not tell her mother why she would not eat it, and to excuse herself and said, I fell asleep when I was out. Next day the mother said to Three Eyes, This time you shall go and observe if Two Eyes eats anything when she is out, and if anyone fetches her food and drink, she must eat, for she must eat and drink in secret. So Three Eyes went to Two Eyes and said, I will go with you and see if the goat is taken proper care of and driven where there is food. But Two Eyes knew what was in Three Eyes' mind and drove the goat into the high grass and said, We will sit down and I will sing something to you, Three Eyes. Three Eyes sat down and was tired with the walk and with the heat of the sun, and Two Eyes began to sing the same song as before and sang, Three Eyes, are you waking? But then, instead of singing, Three Eyes, are you sleeping? As she ought to have done, she thoughtlessly sang, Two Eyes, are you sleeping? And sang all the time, Three Eyes, are you waking? Two Eyes, are you sleeping? Then two of the eyes which Three Eyes had shut and fell asleep, but the third, as it had not been named in the song, did not sleep. It is true that Three Eyes shut it, but only went in her cunning to pretend it was asleep too, but it blinked, and could see everything well. And when Two Eyes thought that Three Eyes was asleep, she used her little charm. Bleat, my little goat, bleat, cover the table with something to eat, and ate and drank as much as her heart desired, and then ordered the table to go away again. Bleat, bleat, my little goat, I pray, and take the table quite away. And Three Eyes had seen everything. Then Two Eyes came to her, waked her, and said, Have you been asleep, Three Eyes? You are a good caretaker. Come, we will go home. And when they got home, Two Eyes did not eat again, and Three Eyes said to the mother, Now I know why that high-minded thing there does not eat. When she is out, she says to the goat, Bleat, 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 my little goat, bleat, cover the table with something to eat. And then a little table appears before her, covered with the best of food, much better than any we have here. And when she has eaten all she wants, she says, Bleat, bleat, my little goat, I pray, and take the table quite away. And all disappears. I watched it everything closely. She put two of my eyes to sleep by using a certain form of words, but luckily the one in my forehead kept awake. When the envious mother cried, Dost thou want to fare better than we do? The desire shall pass away. And she fetched a butcher's knife and thrust it into the heart of the goat, which fell down dead. When Two Eyes saw that, she went out full of trouble, seated herself on the ridge of the grass at the edge of the field, and wept bitter tears. Suddenly, the wise woman once more stood by her side and said, Two Eyes, why art thou weeping? Have I not reason to weep? She answered, The goat which covered the table for me every day when I spoke your charm has been killed by my mother, and now I shall again have to bear hunger and want. The wise woman said, Two Eyes, I will give thee a piece of good advice. Ask thy sisters to give thee the entrails of the slaughtered goat, and bury them in the ground in front of the house, and thy fortune will be made. Then she vanished. Then Two Eyes went home and said to her sisters, Dear sisters, do give me some part of my goat. I don't wish for what is good, but give me the entrails. Then they laughed and said, If that's all you want, you can have it. So Two Eyes took the entrails and buried them quietly in the evening in front of the house door, as the wise woman had counseled her to do. Next morning, when they all awoke and went to the house door, there stood strangely magnificent trees with leaves of silver and fruit of gold hanging among them, so that in all the wide world there was nothing more beautiful or precious. They did not know how the tree could have come there during the night, but Two Eyes saw that it had grown up from the entrails of the goat, for it was standing on the exact spot where she had buried them. Then the mother said to One Eye, Climb up, my child, and gather some of the fruit of the tree for us. One Eye climbed up, but when she was about to get a hold of one of the golden apples, the branch escaped from her hands, and that happened each time, so that she could not pluck a single apple, let her do what she might. Then the mother said, Three Eyes, do you climb up? You with your three eyes can look about better than One Eye. One Eye slipped down, and Three Eyes climbed up. Three Eyes was not more skillful, and might search as she liked, but the golden apples always escaped her. At length, the mother grew impatient and climbed up herself, but could not get a hold of the fruit no better than One Eye and Three Eyes, for she always clutched empty air. Then Two Eyes said, "I will just go up, perhaps I may succeed better." The sisters cried, "You indeed, with your 2 eyes, what can you do?" But Two Eyes climbed up with the golden apples, did not get out of her way. And the golden apples did not get out of her way, but came into her hand of their own accord, so that she could pluck them one after the other, and she brought a whole apronful down with her. The mother took them away from her, and instead of treating poor Two Eyes any better for this, she and One Eye and Three Eyes were only envious, because Two Eyes alone had been able to get the fruit, and they treated her more cruelly. And so it happened that once they were all standing there by the tree, a young knight came up. "Quick, Two Eyes," cried the two sisters, "creep under us and don't disgrace us." And with all that they sped and turned an empty barrel, which was standing close by the tree, over poor Two Eyes, and they pushed the golden apples which she had gathered under it too. When the knight came near, he was a handsome lord who stopped and admired the magnificent gold and silver tree, and said to the two sisters, To whom does this fine tree belong? Anyone who would bestow one branch of it on me, might in return for it ask whatsoever he desired." Then One Eye and Three Eyes replied that the tree belonged to them, and that they would give him a branch. They both took great trouble, and they were not able to do it, for the branches and fruit both moved away from them every time. Then said the knight, "It is very strange that the tree should belong to you, and that you still should not be able to break a piece off." They again asserted that the tree was their property. While they were saying so, Two Eyes rolled out a couple of golden apples from under the barrel to the feet of the knight, for she was vexed with One Eye and Three Eyes for not speaking the truth. When the knight saw the apples, he was astonished, and he asked where they had came from. One Eye and Three Eyes answered that they had another sister who was not allowed to show herself, for she had only 2 eyes like any common person. The knight, however, desired to see her, and cried, "Two Eyes, come forth." Then Two Eyes, quite comforted, came from beneath the barrel, and the knight was surprised at her great beauty, and said, "Thou, Two Eyes, canst certainly break off a branch from the tree for me." "Yes," she replied Two Eyes, "that I certainly shall be able to do, for the tree belongs to me." And she climbed up, and with the greatest ease broke off a branch with so beautiful silver leaves and golden fruit, and gave it to the knight. Then said the knight, "Two Eyes, what shall I give thee for it?" "Alas," answered Two Eyes, "I suffer from hunger and thirst, grieve and want from early morning till late night. If you would take me with you and deliver me from these things, I should be happy." So the knight lifted Two Eyes onto his horse and took her home with him to his father's castle, and there he gave her beautiful clothes and meat and drink to her heart's content. And as he loved her so much, he married her, and the wedding was solemnized with great rejoicing. When Two Eyes was thus carried away by the handsome knight, her 2 sisters grudged her a great fortune in downright earnest. "The wonderful tree, however, still remains with us," thought they, "and even if we can gather no fruit from it, still everyone will stand still and look at it and come to us and admire it. Who knows what good things may be in store for us? But the next morning, the tree had vanished, and all their hopes were at an end. And when Two Eyes looked out of the window of her own little room, to her great delight, it was standing in front of it, and so it had followed her. Two Eyes lived a long time in happiness. Once 2 poor women came to her in her castle and begged for alms. She looked in their faces and recognized her sisters, One Eye and Three Eyes, who had fallen into such poverty that they had to wander about and beg for bread from door to door. Two Eyes, however, made them welcome